Chapter 75. With his Plymouth Fury out of commission, Ryan had expected to be transported in a Cadillac. Instead, he had to settle for the same black minivan which the Meta gang used to attack the orphanage in the past. These psychos had no taste at all. "This is a disgrace," Ryan complained at the back, Jean Henry on his lap. Saren was driving at the front, while Mosquito sat on the second row of seats. "At least it's a Chrysler. Nobody can see us with the tinted windows," Saren grunted at the front, as she drove through New Rome's streets. They had left Rust Town soon after dusk, and Ryan had taken the opportunity to memorize the name of the border guards they bribed to get out. "People raise the alarms when they see us out in the open." "Yeah, right, a black minivan doesn't scream suspicious at all. Half of us are too big to fit in a normal car, boss," Mosquito pointed out, having to lower his head to fit inside. "We have to transport Frank by truck." "Ah, the logistics of superhumans." Ryan wondered how the Danish managed to deal with their giant serpent overlord Nighthawk. They probably had to redraw the maps after every transformation. "What's your second power, Mosquito?" the president asked, as they traveled through the southern slums. "Besides the whole Bugman thing. I took the Hercules knockoff, the super strength one." Mosquito let out a sigh. "Didn't work out well. I only get the super strength after I'm filled with blood, and I weaken every minute afterward." "You took a second green?" Ryan asked, squinting in skepticism. "Why? You didn't want to go for the full rainbow?" "Well, being a giant mosquito isn't very glamorous, you know, boss. I figured if I drank an elixir of the same color as the first one, it would wash away the first power and replace it. It made sense to me." "You're a dumbass," Saren said out loud what Ryan was thinking. Mosquito bristled. "Yeah, but at least I've got a body." "Shut your mouth." Saren stopped looking at the road to raise her hand at Mosquito, as if to blast him. "I'll tear your wisecracking head off." "Hey, everyone calm down, there's a cat at the back," Ryan said to defuse the situation. Mosquito and Saren exchanged finger gestures, but the Meta's new vice president focused back on the road. "Besides, you took 2 elixirs too, Chernobyl. It's the pot calling the kettle black." "That's fucking different, asshole," Saren replied. "I took my elixirs soon after last Easter, back when nobody knew taking more than one was a terrible idea. While that bug knew exactly what he was getting into." Ryan blinked. "Wait, you've been like this for 15 years. 14. I swear, if you find a cure, first thing I'll do is to fuck someone's brains out. 14 years of celibacy, man. 14 years. I don't get how priests do it." There was a sick joke to make here, but even Ryan had standards. Mosquito had none though. "Well, they learn how to handle kids." Ignoring the bugman laughing at his own joke, Ryan meditated on this information. Saren's situation made him pause, but watching her join Adam in burning down New Rome lessened the sympathy he might have felt for her. As for Mosquito, he happily helped to abduct orphans to throw at the bunker's defenses. Yeah, these two had made bad calls. But instead of turning their life around, they kept making worse ones. If anything, the only mutant the courier felt pity for was Frank the Mad, who clearly suffered from a mental illness and needed psychiatric treatment. Maybe it was Ryan's experience with bloodstream talking, but the time traveler had a hard time seeing psychos as anything but monsters. Eventually, Saren reached their destination, and parked the minivan in front of Deadland Motel. Livia and her escort were waiting in the parking lot. Unlike last time, where she had shown up with only Cancel and Mortimer, the Augusty princess had brought reinforcements. Sparrow, Night Terror, and Luigi the hockey victim. Damn it, Ryan knew he had overlooked something. "Howdy, legitimate gentlemen," Ryan greeted the group, as he and his psycho bodyguards emerged from their car. The president carried a Jean Henry in his hands. "We come in peace." "Hi, I'm Cancel." Only Greta raised a hand and waved it at the group with a fake smile. Ryan wondered what it would take to break her cheerful demeanor. "Nice to meet you." The others weren't so enthusiastic though. Mortimer hid a gun beneath his cloak, Sparrow shielded Augusta's daughter with her body, Night Terror stood still in eerie silence, and Luigi courageously stayed at the back. As for Livia. So, you're the new leader of the Meta Gang. Though she seemed confident and in control, Ryan noticed the slight unease at the edge of Livia's gaze. While she could read notes left by her previous self, the presence of psychos didn't help make her feel safe. Quick save, is it? President, Ryan replied, carrying his cat in his hands. Mr. President. Who elected you? Mortimer asked, curious. You don't want to know, Mosquito replied while shuddering. They had persuasive arguments. 6 against 3, Saren taunted the Augusti. You really fear us that much? Considering you've been attacking our businesses lately, we expected a trap, Sparrow replied, before checking an earplug hidden beneath her hair. Miss Livia, it seems they indeed came alone. I know the previous administration and yours didn't get along well, but it's all in the past now, Ryan said. We want peace between our two nations. We even brought a gift to show our goodwill. A gift? Greta's smile turned genuine, having been informed ahead of time. I love gifts. What kind of gift? The old administration, of course. Ryan said before snapping his fingers. Mosquito opened the black minivan's chest, grabbed the content, and tossed it at Livia's feet. Packaged just for you. Sishok wriggled on the ground, blissfully out of commission. The Augusti princess looked down at the brainjacker's limp body with contempt. Sparrow and Mortimer studied the psycho with curiosity, while Greta's gleeful joy turned to disappointment. Oh, he's drugged out. Cancel complained, as she noticed the liquid dripping from Sishok's mouth. I prefer it when they understand what's coming. It doesn't feel right otherwise. We fished this squid yesterday, Ryan said. You'll need to negate his power first to make his death stick though. Wait, she can negate powers? Saren asked, immediately interested. Yes, I am doing it right now, Greta said with pride, which Ryan confirmed after a failed attempt at activating his time stop. Then why am I still made of gas? Saren complained, before raising her hand to the skies. Huh? I can't generate shockwaves anymore. I don't know why, but some powers trump mine, Cancel said with disappointment. Like the boss. He can't shoot lightning in my presence, but he's still invulnerable. And be thankful for it, Sparrow said ominously. He would have killed you otherwise. So this confirmed Ryan's theory. Cancel didn't nullify powers. She disrupted the elixir's connection to their color dimension, preventing access to this bottomless power source, but couldn't affect physical mutations. However, she managed to negate Mongrel's pyrokinesis in a previous loop, which she got from a knockoff that didn't draw upon the red dimension for fuel. Ryan tried to reconcile these two contradictions, until he realized the missing link, Mongrel's original white elixir. Since it was the one keeping his multiple powers in balance, by disrupting it, Cancel probably caused his other abilities to go haywire. As for Augustus, it could only mean his invulnerability was a physical mutation. Combined with the other information Ryan had gathered, then Mobzu's body probably mimicked the properties of a specific metal. A superior variant of Frank's power. Probably an orange. A damn strong orange, but it didn't explain how lightning butt could move in the stop time, or why most powers failed to affect him. Unless the metal itself had unique, anomalous properties. It was just a theory and he would need to test its limits, but Ryan felt he was onto something. More worrying, since Ryan's power relied on his connection to the purple world, it meant Cancel's power would probably kill permanently. His other self would remain trapped in the purple world, unaware his future incarnation had perished. Anyway, can we wait until the squid wakes up? I want to see the light go. Mortimer drew a silenced pistol before Greta could finish her sentence, and shot Sipsy twice in the head. Morty, you hyena. Find your own kills. What? He asked, smoke coming out of his weapon. It's teamwork. You soften the prey, I finish it off. 50-50. But you always get the good part. Ryan would lie if the sight of Sishok's corpse bleeding out on a parking lot didn't fill him with joy. Vice President, please call our staff to check if Sipsy's victims recovered, the POTUS asked Saren, before turning at Livia. So? Do we sign a peace treaty, shake hands? Let us discuss that inside a private space, she replied. Luigi will be present as well. You're really sure about that? Ryan asked, disliking the man's presence. He might go mad from the revelation. I hear people's dirty laundry every day, Luigi replied with a snort. Nothing you say will surprise me. Oh well, he asked for it. Livia led the two men upstairs, to the same cozy suite where she welcomed Ryan in the previous loop. She invited them to sit around the table, with the cookies and coffee cups already set. A drink? She offered Ryan. No thank you, Ryan replied, letting a Jean Henry leap onto the bed nearby. His host couldn't suppress a raised eyebrow. Is this really necessary? You should have all the information available. I wish to hear it from you, Livia said, glancing at Luigi. And have my intel confirmed. Don't try to lie, the truth teller warned Ryan. You can't. Do you want the short version or the long one? The time traveler asked, as he sensed Luigi's power take over. You could give a summary, Livia proposed. All right. Time to rant. I am a time traveler, and I've been at it for centuries. I've lived a full life in Monaco, which I don't recommend, and I've tried pretty much everything you can think of. Including beating you up, Luigi. Livia, you can make notes that carry through my time jumps, so everything you wrote down is true. This is the third loop where we meet and I really hated how you took away my control over all factors, but like cancer, I've learned to live with it. Also, you really remind me of a friend who suffered from a toxic family environment, so I want to help. I beat the shit out of the Metagang last loop before they could kill everyone with an orbital laser, but your daddy waged war on the Carnival and Dynamis, and the city burned again. I saved your ex-boyfriend from your aunt for you, but she ended up killing Fortuna instead, and your lightning dad smashed a living son into New Rome and I had to reload. But Sipsy managed to follow, which didn't end well for him. I helped feed Big Fat Adam to a black alien whom I called Darkling, because it eats hope and happiness. Then I gave the Metagang the democratic choice of voting for me or dying. I became president, and I love democracy so much I'm never relinquishing power until my death. The whole timeline is ruined, so I decided to try new stuff like finding a cure for the psycho condition, and also, you have the brain patterns of a friend trapped in your head, which I really want back, please. I haven't doctored your notes or anything, and I have no intention of causing you trouble until you go after me first. Except for you, Luigi. I hate you so much. The first time I beat you was one of my eternal life's best memories, and I loved doing it. I love it so much I'll keep doing it in every loop until the last one. Also, nothing you will do during this loop really matters since I'll reload eventually, so your life is meaningless. You don't matter. Ryan joined his hands. I think that's all. By the time he had finished, Livia's fingers fidgeted around her coffee cup, and her gaze lost itself in the pitch darkness of her beverage. Luigi's stare had turned distant, as he underwent an existential crisis. Eventually, Livia glanced at her truth-teller. Luigi. Why yes, ma'am. I overworked you, and you need a vacation, Livia said with a calm, friendly tone. To make up for it, I will make a generous deposit on your account. I think 20 million euros should be a good compensation. You leave New Rome right now. Luigi's eyes widened in shock. Like, what, now? Now, Livia said, her tone less friendly than before. You leave and you don't look back. Where am I supposed to go? The truth-teller protested. Not here, Livia said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Obviously, you won't say a word of this to anyone else, even my father. If you do, I will know, and your free time will be cut short. Do you understand? Luigi was an ass, but he could see the blood on the wall. Also, if you don't leave the city by next sunrise, I will beat you up with a hockey stick, Ryan blurted out while still under the power's effect. Oh wait, no, I'm president now. I can order drone strikes. Luigi wisely rose from his chair and left the room. Ryan briefly froze time to look out the window. The truth-teller was running down the motel's stairs as fast as he could, much to his fellow Augustes' surprise. "Convinced, Princess?" Ryan said as time unfroze, sitting back in his chair. "I admit this is a lot to process, even with prior warning." Livia glanced at Eugene Henry, who had claimed the bedsheet as his own. "Why can't I sin this time? My notes said I couldn't before. Is this a different cat?" "No, but he lost his power," Ryan replied with a shrug. "You're sure Luigi won't talk?" "He will be too busy processing what he heard to do anything about it," Livia replied before wincing. "Sending him away now is the best choice. My power gave him one chance out of 3 of killing himself if I didn't." Ryan couldn't tell he was surprised. In his experience, it was usually the most common response to people learning the truth, closely followed by attempting to capture the time traveler himself. "So, you believe me? Well, your tale does match what's in my records, but there are a few things I wish to discuss." Livia peered into Ryan's eyes. "Since you've taken over the Metagang by force, it means you controlled the bunker during this iteration?" So she knew. Of course she did. Her father probably had moles in Dynamis, and Livia probably recorded its existence in her notes for future loops. "Yes." "What will you do with it?" "Well, for now, I'll learn everything I can about its content, and then I will destroy it in the final loop," Ryan explained. "It's an apple of discord. Every time it's unearthed, it spells disaster for this city." She frowned. "You're sure what's inside can't be used for good in the right hands?" "There are no right hands," Ryan quoted Leo Hargraves, and he was tempted to agree. "True, some of the technology inside can benefit humanity, and it will once I've filtered it out. But you must understand a big orbital laser will never be used for positive ends." "No, probably not," Livia admitted. "You want to cure psychos. I thought you could help me with that, actually. You want to figure out why my father and I can use 2 powers with no side effects," she guessed, crossing her arms. "Dynamis already made a similar offer, but I refused to assist. They would use this knowledge to make an army. And I will use it to cure people." She looked away. I'll consider it. Just give me some time to process everything, Ryan. It would be so much easier if I could remember directly, instead of catching up with written notes." "Maybe you could," Ryan said. "But Sishok sabotaged the tech needed. I'm trying to figure out how to solve that during this loop." "Is that why you need Len Sabino's mental map?" she asked, and the time traveler nodded in response. "All right. I will need time to type down all the data, but I could forward it tomorrow at the earliest." "Wait, you're giving it to me?" Ryan asked, surprised. "Just like that?" Livia blinked in confusion. "Yes, why? That wasn't our deal." "Yes, but I expected another fetch quest or a blackmail attempt." "I am not an ingrate, Ryan." The Auguste princess sounded a little offended by his skepticism. "Though I do not remember it, from what I read, you did me a great favor. I trust my previous self's judgment." That was extraordinarily noble of her. Someone else would have tried to use that leverage to exact concessions. "I'm deeply in your debt." "No, Ryan," she answered with a smile. "I'm the one with the debt, and I'm clearing it off the books." The time traveler looked away. "You know, I've been doing this alone for so long. After what happened with Sishok, you can't imagine how good it feels to have someone helping me out with no strings attached." "You're not alone," Livia said. "That's what you told my other self." It impacted her enough to write it down, and I believe she had come to trust you a great deal. Even though it will take time for me to catch up, I hope we can continue on this path. "Yes. Ryan too." "So what next, Princess? You will join me in trying to explore the bunker?" Livia shook her head sadly. "I think my father will get suspicious if I do. He already wanted to eliminate you before I convinced him a conflict would only benefit Dynamis, and even then my family will want to retake Rust Town. I can give you a week or 2, but afterward, you will need to leave or hide beneath the earth." "Yeah, I expected as much," Ryan said, finally deciding to sip a coffee cup. "To be honest, I don't expect this loop to last that long. Too many things went off script. Livia's smile faltered. There will be no long-term consequences? You will reload, no matter what? Yes. If you want to try something you never dared to before, now is the time. Livia didn't answer, focusing on her cup. It's about Adam Kitten, isn't it? I thought I should use the opportunity to try and make up with him. See if. The princess struggled to find the right words. See if I'm wrong. Livia and her ex-boyfriend had a final talk, right before the end. Ryan didn't know exactly what they told each other, but he strongly suspected it. Felix had told her the truth. About why he left, and wouldn't return. That he never loved Livia at all. Not the way she did. Her old self had written it down, and sent a bottle to the sea to reach her next incarnation. And now, Livia was in denial over the bitter truth. She needed to prove this information wrong, to see if she could change the ending. Ryan knew, because he had been there first. He wanted to talk her out of it, because she would only hurt herself, but he respected her wish. The princess needed to learn the same lesson he did. More and more uncomfortable, Livia hastily changed the subject. There's something else you should know, Ryan. A few of our members perished in mysterious circumstances lately. Assassinations, bombs. Shroud. As Ryan worried, without the handsome courier to talk him out of it, he had already started his assassination spree. The president had tried to visit Mr. See-Through at the harbor on his way to the meeting, but the hideout almost blew up in his face instead. Shroud had seen Ryan with the Meta gang, and assumed he turned psycho. Which meant the carnival might start targeting Ryan during this loop, as if he didn't have enough on his plate already. At least the fact the Meta gang didn't send anyone to the harbor prevented a massacre there, as seen by Luigi's continued existence. Are Jamie Cutter, Lanka, and Ki-young still alive? They are, Livia confirmed before frowning. You think they will be targeted next? Yes. Shroudy Repairs bombed their apartment once, he would do it again. I'll find a way to avoid a war in New Rome. I'm sure there's a combination of events that can prevent an open conflict. A path to the perfect ending. I just need to figure it out. Livia corrected him. We need to figure it out. Ryan examined her closely. Princess, your father. Ryan, stop, she cut him off. Your father put a hit on Felix and sent his armies to burn New Rome to the ground, Ryan said. True, Alphonse working cancer manada shares half the responsibility, but Lightning Bud is clearly part of the big picture problem. I read my other self's report on the war. But since she hadn't experienced these events, it hadn't had the effect Ryan would have yet hoped. I understand who my father is, Ryan. I do. I'm not blind. But he's still my father. I don't want him dead. I want him to retire and away from power, so he can't harm anyone else. And let him get away with all his crimes. Also, retire? To quote Enrique, men like Augustus didn't go into quiet retirement. Like you want Hargraves to get away with my mother's death, Livia replied, her tone harshening. Ryan, you spoke of a perfect ending. What is it to you? An ending where all the people I like get to live happily ever after, Ryan said. That was horribly cliché, but that was the truth. An ending where as many innocents as possible survive. I want to save as many lives as possible and make my loved ones happy too, she said with a sigh. We're both making concessions here. I'm willing to set aside my own grudges, if you set aside yours. If you're right, and there is a path to a good ending, then we can find something that satisfies us both. If we cooperate, then we will find it eventually. And if they couldn't find a common ground, then nobody would get their happy ending. Ryan exited the suite a few minutes afterward with a Jean Henrietteau, quite happy with the meeting. He wouldn't have to worry about the Auguste this time around, and he had secured Len's uncorrupted brain map. Now, he only needed the technology to make the transfer work. So? Saren asked, as Ryan returned to the minivan while stepping over Sishok's corpse. Do we pack our things and run, or? We signed a peace treaty, but we will keep an American presence in Rusttown for a while. Maybe we'll retire them next year. Of course, Nobody would believe it, but it was the thought that counted. What about Sipsy's thrills? The ones in our custody returned to their senses, right when Shishak bit the dust, Saren said. They completely forgot their time under his control, but they can think for themselves now. Ryan nodded, knowing it was only a matter of time before Dynamis reacted to this change. However, someone else was always on his mind. And Len? Is she alright? Chernobyl's short hesitation told him something had gone wrong. She's awake, but doesn't respond, Saren admitted. She sounded strangely apologetic for once. Like a vegetable. I think Shishak scrambled her brain real bad on his way out. That bastard. He had tried to make sure Len wouldn't recover, even if he was somehow beaten. He couldn't just die with dignity, he had to twist the knife. If Shorty had brain damage, then Ryan had no choice but to rely on Alchemo. He didn't like it at all, but he was running out of options. Almost. What do we do next, boss? Mosquito asked, arms crossed. I received a 35 pages report from an underground base specialist. Yuki's girlfriend had been nothing if not thorough. Time to commit robicide. Even without Shishak, Big Fat Adam had managed to gain partial control of the bunker. Ryan bet he could do better. Chapter 76. No. Watching the Dynamis CEO's face on his computer screen, Ryan scratched his cat's ears. This G2 conference call wasn't going well. I think I misheard, Mr. Manada. I said no, Hector replied, the two using a secure channel to communicate. No more knockoffs. My agreement was with your predecessors, and their demise changes everything. Certainly we can continue where they left off. Listen to me, you little shit, the CEO said, his calmness all but gone. I know you met with the Augusti and hashed out a peace agreement. Shishak brainwashed people on my staff, inside my house. Your people didn't deliver and backstabbed me. So why should I honor my side of the bargain? How did he know about the meeting with Livia? Ryan had done his best to cover it up. Either the CEO had an advanced surveillance system, or plants among the Augusti. Perhaps both. As for his reaction, Ryan thought the Dynamis Metagang alliance had collapsed in the past because Shishak's death ruined the brain copying project, but he was mistaken. In truth, the brainjacker had initiated a slow, insidious takeover of Dynamis, brainwashing staff members and executives one by one. Sipsy's demise had exposed his treachery, and made Hector Manada aware of the Metagang's true, nefarious intentions. If only he hadn't been greedy enough to hire them in the first place. Then I guess I will reveal the recordings of your discussions with the previous administration, Ryan said, upon realizing he couldn't maintain the old juice connection. Because they kept recordings. Hector squinted. Are you blackmailing me, Mr. Romano? I prefer the term plata o plomo, Mr. Escobar. Ryan always thought the CEO looked like a Colombian cartel leader. Then you're firing blanks. A scandal will cost me less to cover up than another knockoff delivery. Then perhaps your competition. We both know Augustus will never forgive the attacks on his territory, even if you submit to him. Your group signed its death warrant the moment you shook the hornet nest. That was why he had hired the Metagang in the first place. They were the only genomes mad enough to take on the Augusti in spite of the deadly consequences, except the carnival. Still, Ryan had one last card up his sleeve. Then I should reveal what's inside your knockoffs. I'm sure your people will love buying a psycho in a can. Ryan had to give it to the man, he had a good poker face. But the courier could see the tension at the edge of his gaze. I have no idea what you're talking about. I know what you and your pet Scully keep in Lab 66. No, you don't. Damn, he wasn't biting. For all his faults, Hector Manito was cautious enough not to reveal truly incriminating information. Unlike Shishak, he knew how to deal with bluffs. Bloodstream. That's ridiculous, Hector replied with a smug, punchable smile. Do you have any proof? I've analyzed the knockoffs, Ryan lied. I can publish the results. The CEO didn't believe him, or at least not fully. But the courier could tell he had hit close to the mark. There was a link between the knockoffs and Bloodstream, as much as Ryan loathed to admit it. Many have tried to discredit our work, and yet we remain. Hector Manita joined his hands. Here is my one and only offer, Mr. Romano. You keep the knockoffs, release my technicians, return my technology, and skip town within 48 hours without making waves. You will carry the secret of this agreement to your grave, and I will let you be. This experiment will have been a failed joint venture, but maybe we could make another deal in the future. Yeah, right. And if I don't file for bankruptcy? Then I will answer with force. Hector stated the obvious. Enrique and Wyvern have been pestering me about sending Illinois Migliore to drive you out of Rust Town. My stamp of approval is the only thing standing between you and annihilation. Gee, another big business threatening the government. It almost made Ryan want to become a socialist. I'll consider your offer. 48 hours, Mr. Romano. No more, no less. Ryan cut the communication, and Saren entered the Oval Office soon afterward. So? She asked. How did it go? Everything is going according to plan, Ryan said sinisterly, a Jean Henry purring on his lap. Hector Manita had walked into a trap without even realizing it, and the courier had secured 2 days of non-interference. Is everyone ready for the operation? We're storming the mainframe or we'll die trying. Yeah, but there are new people at the junkyard's entrance. They fit the descriptions you gave us about that brainy guy and his robot daughter, so Jim and I didn't shoot them on sight. Alcimo had already reached New Rome. He must have dropped everything and left right after Ryan gave him the call. Bring them to the hangar, Miss Vice President. Gotta ask, you're sure of what you're doing, right? Hazmat Girl asked, a little worried. I mean, even with our losses in manpower, we'll run out of juice soon. You really don't want to see the others when they're missing their shot. Having lived with Bloodstream for years, Ryan had a pretty good idea how it would turn out. Leaving a Jean Henry in the Oval Office, the president walked towards the hangar, only to meet with a rabbit plushie in a corridor. The terrible creatures had grown more numerous lately, and without any children to bond with. Let's play outside. The possessed toy asked, hopping in front of Ryan's feet. No, said the president, but the abomination wouldn't listen. Let's play outside. The plushie insisted, one of its paws revealing a switchblade. Not yet, Ryan replied, the promise of future destruction pacifying the beast of the end times. When he reached the hangar, Ryan found Frank dragging an old, 1986 Fleetwood Bounder right next to the unused Mecron mech. Alcimo and the doll stepped out of it, all under Saren's watchful gaze. Careful, I have precious equipment in the back. Alcimo was still the same brass and steel cyborg with a brain in a jar for a head and syringes for fingers. It took Ryan all his willpower to keep a straight face at the betrayer, as he grunted at Frank for carelessly handling his car. His android daughter T, alias the doll, had changed a little. She was still a lovely redhead dressed like the stereotypical country girl, but she had covered her arms with synthetic skin, making her truly lifelike. If Ron didn't know her true nature, he might have mistaken her for a human of flesh and blood. And she glared at Ryan the second she spotted him. All clear, Mr. President. Frank greeted the leader of the free world with a military salute. Your guests have arrived. Good work, Agent Frank, Ryan congratulated him, while the doll moved in his direction. Hey, T, long time no see, she slapped him in the face with enough force to make him flinch. Saren prepared to blast T to smithereens, while a furious Frank took a step forward. Wait, it's okay. Ryan calmed his bodyguards with a raised hand. She's my ex. She can do that. Oh, she is a former First Lady? Frank asked, instantly calming down. A damn fine country girl you found, Mr. President. It reminds me of my native Texas, and the good old times. You. T glared at Ryan. No word for 2 years, and that's all you have to say? Long time no see? Ryan sighed, as he massaged his cheek. He could have dodged with a time stop, but a part of him thought he deserved it. Was that really warranted? That's all you deserved, Alcimo said dryly. Ryan, I understand you might have your reasons for leaving us. You always were a free spirit, and that's what I loved about you. T crossed her arms. But you didn't even write. Well, Ryan did send letters once, asking how their robot cow was doing, only to receive a confused answer. As it turned out, he had referenced events erased in the previous loop, and something they never built in the final one. The realization had crushed him so much he had erased that timeline too. Unfortunately, Ryan knew a lot more about Doll than the other way around. He had learned everything about her past, everything she liked, everything she hated. They had done all the things T had dreamed of, like visiting friends, but she only remembered a fraction of their shared experiences. From her point of view, Ryan and her had a brief fling. From his, they had been together for years. And much like how Jasmine forgetting him had hurt, Ryan simply couldn't stand carrying the burden of a shared past alone, especially after Braindead's betrayal. So he left and tried to forget. And yet, when he looked at her, Ryan realized some people he left behind had cared. That the little time they remembered spending with the courier had mattered. And it made him feel regretful. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, not knowing what else to say. "I'm sincerely sorry." "That's a start," T said, her face softening a little. She simply couldn't hold a grudge. "But you have a great many things to explain. What are you doing with these monsters?" "Hey, I'm not a tin can pretending to be human," Saren snarled, the doll ignoring her. "You are a member of the Meta Gang," Alchimo said with disdain. "Frankly, the only reason we're even here is because I owe this biological waste of a Violet a favor. I don't even understand why he's working with you." "Yes, Ryan, I thought you hated psychos," T asked, a little fearful for his well-being. They aren't forcing you to work with them." Saren snorted. "You got it the other way around. Nobody controls the USA," Frank added. "We arrested our alien overlords and enslaved them." "I won a civil war for control of this great nation," Ryan said. "Now I'm trying to find a cure for the psycho condition. And to help a friend in need, first and foremost." While the doll immediately looked concerned, Ryan's words only aroused Alchimo's scientific curiosity. "A cure for psychos, you said? All right, Ryan, I'll trust you. For old time's sake." T put her hands on her waist. "But there's still one person you're going to apologize to." The courier glanced at the minivan. "He's inside." "Yes," T replied, utterly serious. "Yes he is." Ryan took a deep breath, and carefully opened the van's back doors. As expected, Alchimo had brought a sizable part of his workshop, from wetware computers, multicolored jars of questionable content, miniature brain scanners, and a toaster. Ryan looked at it, noticing 4 small wheels carrying it forward. The tiny object drove to the edge of the car, facing the courier. "Hi, Ryan," the toaster's vocalizer mimicked Schwarzenegger's Terminator voice. "Hi, Toasty." Ryan could feel the other's stares peering on his back. This was awkward. "You have wheels now?" "Yep, T installed them when I got tired of watching TV all day." Unlike the others, there was no hint of reproach in the toaster's voice. 2 years, Ryan. 2 years. I hope you toasted a lot of chicks in that time, because I couldn't get any. Yeah, being a toaster probably reduces your opportunities, the courier mused. There, still the same old blyst. The toaster let out a click sound. Damn, I missed you, man. I love life on the farm, but you added a certain je ne sais quoi. Saren kept glancing between the toaster and Ryan, completely at a loss of words. What, you thought the plushie was my first creation? That I was a one-trick pony? The courier deadpanned. I went through a robot building phase. Yeah, he was scraping the bottom of the barrel when he made me, Toasty said as he drove out of the car and onto the bunker's floor. A little bit of advice, don't let him tinker in his boxers. You'll spend days picking up the scraps. You made an intelligent toaster. Saren glanced down at Ryan's creation with skepticism. Why a toaster? I feel I'm being judged right now, Toasty said. At one point in my life, I wanted to settle in France, Ryan explained. My greatest anxiety was to wake up with a lot of bread. and no way to toast it. Saren put a hand on her gas mask without a word. You know what, I don't care anymore. That's not even the worst thing he did. Braindead snapped, having held a grudge for years. That dumbass equipped my gynoid construct for sex, and then left his dirty body fluids everywhere. It's okay, Dad, I have a cleanup routine, the doll replied, not at all embarrassed by the open outburst. We talked about this. Wait, you slept with a robot? Saren asked Ryan, finally putting the two and two together. I slept with everything and everyone. Though in the end, after centuries of experimentation, Ryan discovered he was mostly attracted to human-shaped women. The courier wouldn't say no to a new experience, like Darkling, but he clearly had a weakness for female geniuses shorter than him. I even equipped her with a detachable. Anyway, a Mecrum base, huh? Alchimo changed the subject, instantly recognizing the bunker for what it was. Did you escalate from drug dealer to terrorist when I wasn't looking? It's not terrorism when our country does it, Frank replied. It's an armed intervention. Oh, awesome, a mecha. Toasty rolled in front of Mecron's Scorpion war machine. Could you upload my personality matrix into it? I mean, a giant robot is just a toaster with too much power. It's meant to be, baby. Is that why you need my unlimited genius? Alchimo asked Ryan, while the toaster happily rolled around the mech. For another prank. No, the courier replied dryly. As I said, a friend needs help. Alchimo and his daughter exchanged a glance, their demeanor changing from angry to concerned. Show me, the genius asked. After taking over the meta gang, Ryan had Len transferred to the infirmary, changing the place from Sishok's brainwashing assembly line into a true medical block. His comatose friend slept on an operation table, hooked to a respirator located right next to Dynami's brain-copying tech. She looked so peaceful in her sleep. Unfortunately, the other patient in the room was insufferably loud. You thief, I'll slay you. Acid Rain strained against her restraints, strapped to an operating table. I'll escape, and when I do, I'll rip you to pieces. I'll carve the gate open with your bowels. Typical psycho. Alchimo raised a handheld scanning device at her head, information appearing on the surface of his dome head. As expected, her head contains a nasty package of tumors and mutant neurons. I'm surprised she can even talk. It's getting harder to sedate her, boss, Saren warned Ryan. I think she's building a tolerance. I'll slay you. Acid Rain snarled at the courier. You're keeping them away from me. All of them. If it weren't for you, I could go back. I could go all the way, but Alchimo hit the captive psycho in the neck with 3 syringe fingers, and injected her with colored liquids. Acid Rain let out a savage growl as her veins turned green from the intravenous transfer, before her voice died in her throat. A few seconds later, her gaze turned empty and lifeless. You know, if you wanted to practice euthanasia, there's a retirement home 2 districts away from here, Ryan told Braindead. I applied a treatment for brain cancer, and mood stabilizers, Alchimo explained. He couldn't understand black comedy. They will destroy the cancerous growths, stabilize her humors, and repair the damaged neurons. It will be a temporary fix as long as her psycho condition produces new mutations, but it should stabilize her mind for a while. Huh? Saren crossed her arms. Could you do the same with Mongrel? The juice wrecked his brain pretty bad too. I thought you didn't care about helping others, Ryan said, remembering how Alchimo had gone along with his drug cartel plans, but never really cared about curing people's illnesses. I didn't, Braindead admitted. But the doll nagged me into it. I thought we should give back to the world, the gynoid said with a smile and a happy nod. So many people suffer from tumors due to the after effects of Mecron's plagues, so I asked Dad to make a cure. Besides, saving my neurocomputers from Alzheimer and similar issues was one of my top priorities, Alchimo said, digging himself deeper. I had plenty of test subjects this way. Yeah, still the same amoral mad scientist. At least the doll acted as his Jiminy Cricket. Ryan glanced at the unconscious Len. Could you cure depression? I can solve the physiological troubles associated with the syndrome, like chemical imbalances, but not the psychological roots. I'm no psychiatrist, and I don't have time to listen to whiners. Still, if Shorty could avoid relying on antidepressants, perhaps she could finally heal. T didn't miss the lingering gaze he sent to Len. Is she? It's her, yes, Ryan confirmed, the doll looking at the unconscious girl with interest. Len. You came to this city to find her, isn't it? That's why you left. You still wanted to find your friend, after all this time. The gynoid gently took Len's hand in her own. She feels so cold, the poor girl. Alcimo examined the comatose genius with his scanner. Someone repeatedly attempted to rewrite her brain patterns in a short amount of time, stressing out her neurons to the point of a near-complete shutdown. She won't wake up on her own, I assure you. Ryan bristled, though he wasn't surprised. We've got a copy of her mind. Livia had sent the file, but begged for a better way to record the information. A brain map copying a human mind needed many lines of code. She strained her fingers typing the whole thing, and even then Ryan suspected her power had helped a great deal in processing the whole thing. Could you repair her brain with it? What is the point of overriding someone's mind with their own? Alcimo asked with skepticism, before deciding he didn't care. Do you have the device that causes these problems in the first place? Ryan pointed a finger at Dynami's brain tech, letting the genius examine it in detail. He didn't look very impressed. I see. Very subtle, yes, Braindead said, as he examined the system's helmet. The system is booby-trapped, and will corrupt the new pattern during the overriding with foreign elements. Can you repair it? Ryan asked. No, Braindead answered bluntly. The sabotage affects the machine's essential parts. However? The courier raised his head with hope. However, I can easily reverse engineer this machine and make my own. One that will work as intended. Alcimo glanced at the infirmary's walls, as if looking for a hidden camera or plan. Is there a genius workshop in this base? Knowing Mekran, he must have had a matter replicator assembled somewhere. There's one, yes, Ryan said, remembering it from the blueprints. A biomechanical blue brain controls the base. We intend to force our way to the mainframe and take it over. A UB, Alcimo guessed. A universal brain. The ultimate biomechanical data storing device. I always tried to build one, but never had the resources for it. It said something about Mekran that he was better than most geniuses in their own specialty. You could hijack it? Ryan asked. He intended to do it without Alcimo's help, but if the genius had turned over a new leaf. If I can get access to it, yes. I suppose it is easier said than done? Big Fat Adam managed to do so twice as far as Ryan knew, though by throwing countless people at the defenses. Nora's structural analysis should allow them to reach the mainframe quickly, but not without a fight. Well, we were preparing to launch an assault before your arrival. I know you're useless in a fight, so, I'm not useless, Braindead weakly protested. I am a man of science, not a sharpshooter, but I can defend myself. Not against robots, Ryan said, glancing at Frank. Which is why the U.S. Secret Service will ensure your safety. He will be safe, sir, the giant assured him. No president died under our watch. None that mattered. Of course. I'm coming, Shorty, Ryan told his comatose partner. Just wait. Chapter 77. This is the Berlin Wall, Ryan said, as he stood between his troops and a blast door, the last frontier between Western civilization and complete annihilation. He glanced at his minions, all ready to die for their country, and because they had little choice. Saren kept her arms crossed, carrying herself with dignity in this dark hour. Darkling lurked in a corner, still sore about its nickname. Alcimo grunted, eager to see the mission done. The rest of the cannon fodder, Gemini, the Reptilian, and Ink Machine waited anxiously, knowing that as red shirts, their odds of survival were slim. The Land, Mosquito, and a few others remained above ground to protect the junkyard. Rakshasa had the critical task of appeasing their ever-numerous rabbit overlords, before their numbers reached critical mass, A doomed task, unfortunately. As for Incognito, Ryan had sent him to Dynamis, to lay the groundwork for the run's final operation. The last member of the crack team soon showed up, holding a black briefcase. "It's here, Mr. President," Frank declared, as he presented the holy item to his dark master. The nuclear football. It came with the mail. Ryan held his breath, as he touched the soft leather with anticipation. He had been careful to order it through a complex route, so the sender wouldn't learn her client's identity, but his efforts had paid off. At long last, the courier's diabolical plan had reached fruition. "What's that, boss?" Saren asked, a bit confused. "A secret weapon?" "The only one that matters." Ryan stopped time, and when it resumed, his clothes had fallen on the floor except for the boxers. His display of manliness was welcomed with surprise and shock. "Oh my!" Ink Machine said, a bit surprised. "Not again, you exhibitionist," Alchimo complained. "If you lead us to battle naked, I'm taking the door." "Eh?" Saren said, as she glanced at Ryan's boxers. "I've seen bigger weapons of mass destruction." The president ignored the masses, as he slowly opened the briefcase and gazed upon the dark power within. Wardrobe's presidential costume. Unlike his previous clothes, it was pure black and red. This time, there would be no more playing around. This suit was unlike anything Ryan's foes had faced before, unrelenting, merciless, uncompromising. Ryan slowly and silently put it on before his troops, to establish his stylish dominance over them. The dark pants first, because it was cold in the bunker. They fit his body curves perfectly, and oozed villainous sex appeal. Then he put on the black leather boots, to stomp protesters' faces. With skull-themed socks. A cashmere red shirt and black suit, Karl Lagerfeld style. Because when you embraced the dark side, you dressed German. A strong and powerful necktie, to represent his authoritarian, unflinching leadership. Velvet gloves, to choke his minions when they talked back. A black jacket, that would flow with the wind when he looked threatening atop rooftops. A red and silver mask covered most of his head, except for the eyes, so that his evil gaze may terrify children. And finally, a savage bowler hat, to show he meant business. No light. No hope. Only one word. "Perfect," Ryan said, deepening his voice to sound more intimidating. His men remained too intimidated to say anything, except for the idiot of the group. "I don't find it anything special," the rebellion said. "And I think it's a bit too ed." In response, Ryan choked him with one hand. It had taken him years to master this move, but the sudden lack of air and blood brought the rebellion to his knees. The Mook attempted to grab the president's arm with his hands, but the lawful authority only strengthened his grip around his victim's throat. "I find your lack of taste disturbing," Ryan said, his tone promising only death. I'm sorry." The rebellion managed to sputter, his rebellion face turning purple. "I'm sorry who, handbag?" "I'm sorry, Mr. President." Ryan released the protester, and let him gasp for breath. He glanced at the other psychos, who all straightened up. Frank carefully grabbed the president's old clothes and put them in the briefcase. "All right then, mooks, listen up," Ryan addressed his troops, as he put his trusty coil gun around his belt, and the fisty brothers on top of his velvet gloves. "Our goal is to reach the base's mainframe thanks to a shortcut, and allow our brain-dead friend to hook up with it." "I'm not. Are you questioning my authority?" Ryan asked Alchimo. "Because I respect freedom of speech." The genius glanced at the rebellion, who had barely recovered from the choking. 2 years, Alchimo said, and it's still the same nonsense. "I love democracy." Ryan promptly continued with his explanations. "Your job is to make sure he reaches his destination. Frank and Darkling will force a path forward, and we'll follow suit." The steel giant immediately made a salute, having put the briefcase aside. "Yes, Mr. President." No answer from his backup though. "Darkling? Darkling?" Ryan glanced at his favorite ball of black goo. "Darkling, are you giving me the silent treatment?" "My name not Darkling." The slime answered unconvincingly, its countless eyes looking away. Then what is it? The president asked smugly. Not Darkling. All right, not Darkling it was. Now, before we go in, I would deliver a speech, but let's be honest, a psycho's life is nasty, brutish, and short. Ryan put his hands on his waist, Darth Vader style. Our fists and guns will do the talking instead. Though Ryan would be lying if he didn't feel a little anxious about this operation. Many of the circumstances that made it possible wouldn't repeat, from Sishar going to the past, Saren acting as a guard, or Darkling using Ghoul as a vessel at the right time. Nor could the courier expect the plushie to play along and stick to a script. For the first time since Ryan had started looping, this run would be a one-shot. Unrepeatable. While he had memorized the shortcut itinerary suggested by Nora, Ryan expected to face heavy resistance. Big Fat Adam had lost most of his men reaching the mainframe, after all, which meant that the things on the other side could kill genomes. One laser to the head, a single fluke, and this run would end abruptly. But Ryan hadn't gotten this far without taking risks, and Len needed it. Now, the president stepped aside and raised his coil gun. Saren, be a dear and use your vibrator. One day, I'll show you a vibrator. His second-in-command raised her hands, and blasted the steel door away with a mighty shockwave. She was immediately welcomed with a hail of laser fire. Ryan hastily froze time, grabbed Saren, and pushed her out of the way before a stray ray could hit her. On the other side of the broken door, the courier glimpsed a squadron of Cyclopean androids, each firing rays from their single eye. They had assembled in tight, defensive positions along a large steel hallway. Texas smash. Frank immediately shouted as time resumed, before bull-rushing the robot squadron. The giant crushed anything in his path, his body absorbing the machine's metal parts on contact. Darkling immediately slithered after him, and the group followed. Ryan and Alchimo remained at their formation center, with the psychos forming an escort around the two of them. All hell broke loose. Ryan barely took a step before he had to dodge a bullet, as the walls opened to reveal twin miniguns on each side. A volley hit Ink Machine by surprise, but her liquid body caused the projectiles to pass through her harmlessly. Before they could hit the rest of the group, Ryan froze time and shot both weapons with his coil gun. Thankfully, the projectiles were powerful enough to perforate the turrets, blowing large holes inside them. His minions, thankfully, didn't stay idle. Saren assisted Frank by blasting away robots with shock waves, with the reptilian tackling any tinkin approaching her too closely. Ink Machine leaped around the room and used her liquid form to seep inside a robot and take it over, using it as a metal shield to protect Alchimo. The strangest member of the meta gang, Gemini, also pulled her weight. While appearing like an ethereal woman of shining light at first glance, Ryan had realized the truth upon closer examination. Her tentacled shadow was the real her, and the shining woman a mere illusion. And that shadow could kill. When it hit the robot's shadows, their bodies suffered the same damage. However, the corridor's lights suddenly increased in luminosity. Two robots moved their pitch-black shadows in such a way that they seemed to grab Gemini's. They figured it out, Ryan thought, astonished, as the robot's shadows restrained Gemini's own. It had only taken the machines a few minutes to guess the nature of her power and figure out a counter. They had also realized that Frank could absorb metal on touch, and switched from trying to dogpile him to laser volleys. These things could learn. Worst of all, the way they moved, avoiding friendly fire, and coordinating almost perfectly. They weren't individual units, but a heavy mind's pieces. And within minutes, that same intelligence had identified Alchimo as a key target. Perhaps because Ryan and the others focused on protecting the genius. Darkling, shield the medic. Ryan shouted while pointing at Alchimo, the Shoggoth immediately switching from attacking robots to protecting the genius. The U's swirled around Alchimo like a barrier without touching him, stopping any laser from coming his way. Instantly afterward though, the machines switched targets. This time, they focused on Ryan. 5 robots unleashed a volley of lasers in his direction, and a 6th attempted to tackle him. What, you couldn't identify me as the leader until I opened my mouth? Ryan taunted them while he activated his power. He leaped out of the laser's way in the frozen time, before smashing the sixth robot's chest in with Fisty. "Haven't you looked at my costume?" A laser made a hole in his bowler hat the moment time resumed, infuriating him. Ryan angrily retaliated by shooting down the machine's halting Gemini with his coil gun, freeing the Psycho. Her shadow quickly tore the remaining robots apart. Having slaughtered the opposition, Frank resumed his rampage and smashed through the next door. The new room beyond the hallway took the shape of a large dome, with the ceiling layered with holographic projections representing the solar system. Ryan noticed a red point in orbit around the Earth, far beyond the moon. However, he didn't have time to look at the beautiful spectacle, as small holes opened all over the dome. Eye-shaped drones flew through, and opened fire at the group with submachine guns. Darkling immediately reshaped itself into a slimy barrier, shielding the entire group from the initial volley. The holograms above their heads brightened, the illusory sun turning supernova and unleashing a blinding light. Blast doors on the walls opened and more Cyclopean androids walked through, an unrelenting tide of steel. While Darkling formed a wall to protect Alchemo, Frank rampaged through the ground-bound machines, his metal body shrugging off lasers easily enough. Unfortunately, his lack of range prevented him from hitting the floating eyes, leaving the task to Saren and Ryan. The courier eventually resorted to stopping time, both to push his second-in-command out of a bullet's path and to hit the damn flyers. Unfortunately, the rest of the group didn't fare any better. Cyclopean robots were trying the same shadow grab tactic their predecessors used on Gemini, except this time with greater numbers. 8 robots grabbed the Psycho's shadow from all sides, and then started dismembering her. Gemini's light body flickered out and collapsed in a bright flash. 5 other Cyclopean machines had cornered Ink Machine, and incinerated her with sustained laser beams. The liquid Psycho dissipated into colored steam, her body unable to stand the heat. Even the Reptilian had only avoided death so far by staying near Darkling. That spot. Ryan pointed at his left once he had a brief respite, near a junction between the dome's wall and the floor. "The structural weakness should be here, Chernobyl." "Stop calling me that," Saren complained, but obeyed all the same. Her gauntlets vibrated, and she started targeting the spot with shockwaves. Cracks slowly began to appear on the floor, the metal foundations floundering under the strain. Of course, the machines instantly attempted to stop Saren, but Darkling formed a defensive wall around her, Alchemo, Ryan, and the Reptilian. Only Frank was left out, but he clearly didn't need help. Eventually, Hazmat Girl blew a wide hole in the floor. The path to the mainframe. Ryan, now in full general mode, barked orders. "Reptilian, with us," he ordered, while Saren leaped into the hole. "Frank, Darkling, cover our rear." "I am not equipped for Klim," Alchema started complaining, only for the Reptilian and Ryan to grab him like a potato sack before jumping into the void. Frank and Darkling moved to cover the hole behind them, snatching any eye drone attempting to follow through. The 2 Titans remained there, brave Spartiates holding off the whole Persian army. The courier and his allies landed in a strange, ghastly gallery of vats and glass containers. Each of them contained half-formed humanoid bodies, some with their organs floating in colored liquid. While they had human features, the creatures' limbs were unnaturally long, and part of their faces had been replaced with machinery. A genome research lab pipes on the walls filled the vats with what Ryan guessed to be elixirs. The Reptilian, in particular, could barely restrain himself from drinking their contents. "Where are we going next?" Saren asked, pointing at 2 blast doors. "Left or right?" "Neither." Ryan instead glanced at a key point in the gallery's white steel wall, right behind a green vat. If they collapsed it, they would gain direct access to the mainframe's room. Saren moved in front of a steel panel, and released colored gas from her fingers. The wall rusted at an accelerated rate while Ryan raised his eyes at the hole above his head. Thankfully, Darkling had wisely sealed the hole with its body, preventing drones from slipping through. "Mr. President," the Reptilian shouted, his hands on the ground. Apparently, his enhanced senses allowed him to notice slight vibrations. I sensed something coming from the left. A robot, bigger than the rest. Oh well, it couldn't be a dungeon raid without a boss at the end. Brain dead, behind me, Ryan said, pushing the genius closer to Saren. Reptilian, hold the line. It's time to die for your country. I would rather avoid that, Mr. President, the reptile complained. Ryan raised his hand to mimic a choking motion, and the Mook rediscovered his patriotism. The left blast door opened a few seconds later, and a 3 meters tall machine walked through. The creature looked like a vat on 6 steely spider legs, with 2 mechanical hands at the front. Crimson liquid swirled inside the vat, as an energy bolt raced through the substance. Ryan could see a tiny crimson spot at the center, a speck-sized portal leading to a realm of overwhelming power. The reptilian immediately rushed at the robot, but never reached his target. The machine pointed a hand at the psycho, and a crimson glow lifted him above the ground. That machine was a telekinetic genome. A true telekinetic, capable of applying force to anything with red flux energy without restriction. The machine sent the reptilian flying at the ceiling with such force, it flattened the psycho. The scene reminded Ryan of a mosquito being crushed by a fly swatter, the mangled body falling on the ground when the killer bot stopped applying force. And now, the thing had turned its attention towards Ryan, raising a steel hand in his direction. The courier froze time the moment he sensed pressure in the air, immediately moving away from his current position and firing a shot. The coilgun's projectile bounced off the strange glass protecting the red substance, much to the time traveler's annoyance. "Tell me, robot, can you touch yourself with that power?" Ryan taunted the machine, which answered by trying to slam him against a wall. Only the courier's use of time stop and enhanced timing allowed him to avoid the reptilian's fate. "I hope those hands aren't just for show." The machine answered by telekinetically ripping out steel panels from the walls, and throwing them at Ryan. It was no fun to banter with a mindless machine. The courier might as well be speaking to a wall, so he focused on avoiding the projectiles and closing the gap. Stopping time at the right moment, Ryan punched the machine's left arm at the joint, snapping it in half with fisty. He hoped it would disrupt its telekinesis. The courier couldn't afford smashing the glass container in close combat, or he might risk being drenched in elixir. The arm fell off when time resumed, but the robot instantly retaliated by trying to impale the courier with its spider legs. Thankfully, Wardrobe's costume had been fashioned for war, and didn't rupture from the courier's acrobatics. Thanks to Ryan's diversion, Saren had melted a tunnel and escaped inside with all Chimo. The courier tried to follow, but the machine attempted to grind him into paste with its remaining arm. Though the time traveler managed to activate his time stop and move away each time the creature started applying force around him, the robot blocked the tunnel's entrance. Thankfully, Darkling chose that moment to slither through the ceiling's hole, and fell directly on top of the robot. The eldritch horror swallowed the machine with its black ooze, its mere proximity negating the machine's telekinesis like Alphonse Manada's radiation. The Shoggoth dissolved the red elixir inside the vat, absorbing the liquid and the portal into itself. "Bon appétit, my dark friend," Ryan said as he fled into the tunnel, leaving his pet Shoggoth to its meal. A minute later, the courier made his way into the bunker's command room, crimson lights and screens flickering above his head. A red force field shielded the central, biomechanical brain, which Alchimo desperately attempted to bypass. Saren, meanwhile, struggled to hit the turrets with shockwaves. "I'll take care of the turrets, help our brainy friend," Ryan told Saren, as he reloaded his coil gun and opened fire at a turret. A projectile went through the machine and caused it to explode. Activating his power, Ryan reached the Gatling turret and leaped at it. Then, he started riding it like a bull, forcefully aiming it at the other weapons in the room. A hail of bullets flew across the room once time resumed, but the distraction allowed Saren to regroup with all Chimo. While Ryan provided suppressing fire, the Chernobyl cosplayer released her gas at the metal pedestal holding the giant brain. Part of it rusted, and caused the force field to short out. Alchimo immediately used the opportunity to climb on the biomechanical construct. Much like Sishak in the previous loop, The genius intertwined with the giant brain, nailing it with his syringe fingers and connecting to the alien machinery. Blue lightning raced through Alcimo's exposed brain, his nervous system directly interfacing with the base's own. And then, the turrets abruptly stopped firing a single shot. The one that Ryan had seized deactivated, much to his disappointment. He had loved the brief rodeo. "Is it over?" Saren asked, glancing at the turrets as if expecting them to open fire again. Alcimo's answer was lukewarm. "I'm changing the admin privileges and ID credentials, so it registers us as staff." "Well, I can't hear tremors or gunfire," Ryan said, "so I would call this operation a success. They might have lost a few red shirts, but the information gathered on the defenses would serve him well." As if to answer the courier's thoughts, the screens around the mainframe showed videos of the bunker's rooms, from the recreational area to the holographic observatory. Frank had piled up a hill of robots at the center, which somewhat obscured the camera's vision of the room. Other screens showed underground labs, a futuristic armory, and a miniature particle collider. "It's incredible." Alcimo sounded giddier than Ryan had ever heard him. "All the wealth of information within this thing. All the secrets it uncovered. I can't access all the files yet, but I can already see what they contain." "Is there one on psychos?" Saren asked, hopeful. "Yes, and that's not all. How Micron enhanced other genomes' powers, how elixirs work. It's all there. All the research, all the secrets." Alcimo looked at Ryan with what could pass for a triumphant pose. "We're going to change the world, meatbag." The new brain-copying machine looked exactly like the old one. Ryan held his breath as he stood right next to a sleeping Len, a helmet covering her face and rewriting her memories. The infirmary's lights blinded him, and he could barely hear himself over his accelerating heartbeat. He had trouble breathing, even without his presidential mask. "It's okay, Ryan," T tried to reassure him. "I've monitored her liphozymes. The treatment is working." "Will Ma wake up after this?" little Sarah asked Alcimo, as he oversaw the memory transfer. Her plushy companion kept glaring at the genius with crimson eyes, probably remembering their previous interactions. "At long last?" "Yes, she should," Alcimo replied with flat affect, before removing Len's helmet. "The transfer is done, and I repaired the damage caused by the machine's overuse. She should recover consciousness soon." "It's..." Ryan sighed, as it killed him to say it. "Thanks. I owed you a favor, did I not?" The genius grunted. "If anything, I should thank you. Accessing Micron's database will supplement my own razy." "Dad," the doll interrupted her maker, glancing at Sarah and Ryan in short order. "Now is not the time. Ugh, I will never understand why a human brain puts so much importance in base feelings." "You made a daughter, didn't you?" Ryan replied, not in the mood for jokes. "You cared too." Alcimo stood still as if he had been slapped, before turning towards the door. "Whatever. Doll, come with me. The real work begins now." "Take care, Ryan," the doll told the courier, before smiling at Sarah. "You're coming with us too." "What?" the little girl protested. "I'm staying. I understand it's important to you, but..." T glanced at Ryan. "I think he needs a moment alone with her. He's been waiting a very long time." That was one way to put it. Ryan sighed when Sarah squinted at him. "Look, your mama and I. We were close." Little Sarah crossed her arms in suspicion. "How close?" "Enough that I thought we might end up making a brat like you one day," Ryan replied bluntly, the young orphan reddening. "There, I destroyed your childhood. Now get away before I do the same with your adulthood." "You, disgusting." Sarah covered her mouth. "Did you?" "Yes, we did." Ryan looked into her sweet, innocent eyes. "And we were 16. Sensing his partner's distress, the plushie grabbed Sarah's robe. "Let's play outside." I need fresh air," Sarah said, finally letting T and her furred partner push her out of the room. At long last, Ryan was alone with Len. As he watched her chest rise up with her breathing, Ryan was brought back to his childhood, when he waited for Len to wake up so they could play outside. He had been in the same position years ago, looking over her like a big brother. "She still loves you." Seshok's words echoed in the courier's mind, as Len began to stir. Her eyelids threatened to open, and the time traveler felt the tension building up in his fingers. "Shorty?" Ryan asked, holding her hand. It was so warm to the touch, so fragile. "Sleeping Beauty? I'm not the prince you asked for, but it's time to wake up." Her bright blue eyes opened, and Len looked up at his face. For a second, Ryan worried he might see Seshok's cold, sociopathic gaze, but thankfully not. It wasn't a look of fear, or confusion, or surprise. It was the elusive look he had waited centuries for, but never achieved. A flash of recognition. "Rere." Len's bright smile melted Ryan's heart. I remember." Such short words, and yet so meaningful. "Rere, it worked." Len rejoiced. The transfer worked. Ryan felt something warm fall down his cheeks. His breath shortened, as he felt a tight pressure build up around his chest. Rere?" Len's expression turned from joy to concern. "Rere, you're crying?" Ryan collapsed to his knees and exploded into tears. He couldn't say a word, let alone move, as the crushing weight of time was suddenly lifted off his shoulders. The centuries of loneliness washed over him like a torrent. The accumulated pain he had buried away, fled, denied, and carried came roaring back to the surface. His brain burned like a blazing fire, and his heart tightened inside his chest. It was a moment of pure joy, but he felt so heavy, so weak, so feeble. He felt like a wandering knight whose bright, shining armor had fallen off his body, revealing the raw sadness underneath. Ryan couldn't even raise his head at the lone witness of his breakdown. He didn't have the strength. He didn't have the strength left. He spent it all in Monaco, in France and Spain, and everywhere else. He exhausted it fighting Adam, fighting Seshok, fighting the Augusti and Dynamis and his countless foes across centuries. He had wasted it all running forward, back to the past, always searching for the perfect ending. He felt her arms move around his neck, and she filled this dark, cold world with warmth. "It's okay, Ryan." Len hugged Ryan tightly, like she often did during their childhood. His head rested against her shoulder, while she kept whispering words into his ear. I'm here, Ryan. You're not alone. You're not alone. No. Not anymore." Tope continued. Thanks for listening.